Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I want to start with gratitude because I love to start with gratitude. And I think when we normally speak of gratitude, we tend to think of what am I grateful for? Right? What am I grateful for? I'm grateful for this, grateful for that. I'm grateful for Amy. I'm grateful for this community. I'm grateful that I can stand here in perfect wholeness and health. But there's another level of gratitude, and that is being the energy or the frequency of gratitude. And recognizing this profound shift that's happening on our planet, where more and more of us are waking up to a recognition that we have moved beyond the law of attraction, and that we are now shifting into the law of radiance. Now, what does that mean? That means rather than shifting my consciousness so I can attract more that I want, I recognize that everything is already within me. I already am everything that I've ever sought. And that's true for each of us. So we have an opportunity right now on planet Earth to recognize that love is who we are, source is who we are, gratitude is who we are, and that we can recognize that's our ultimate reality and radiate that into the world. And two profound things happen when we make that shift. One, we affect the planet in a beautiful way. We can be a beneficial presence on the planet when we shift from what do I want and need to what can I offer. But the second piece is freedom. Absolute freedom, because this is what I want to ask you very, very simply. How is it working wanting the world to give you everything you need? How's that going? Not so well, right? I like to be really practical sometimes. Unity actually was called practical spirituality for a while. And now we're inspired. Tell me what it is. Living Center. Inspired living. It's right there in that title. We are here to live an inspired life and then be that in the world. And when we recognize that, when I really understood that love is who I am and everything else is an illusion, source is who I am, everything else is an illusion, it was a fundamental game changer. Because guess what? I realized it's a game. This game called life. It's an experiment, quite frankly. And I can tell you that my game has changed over time. It started with the game of coming into this world radiating love. And if you look at any baby or toddler, or what I like to call the pre-programmed human, they're radiating love. And part of that radiating love is they also, now this isn't super cognitive, I'm guessing. I don't think a 2-year-old is saying, I'm radiating love, and I'm also going to welcome my humanity. But they're okay with being who and what they are. As a matter of fact, they're totally okay with emoting whatever they're feeling and letting us all know about that. And guess what? When they do that, what happens? It moves through them. And they return to their natural state, which is joy. And so if that's true about pre-programmed humans, that means that each of us is a pre-programmed human underneath all the programs. And so one of the predominant programs that we're experiencing right now in our consciousness is fear. We see it in our politics, and we see it in what we call this health crisis that's happening. Now, I'm not here to debate whether it's real or not, but what I do want to say is it's not the ultimate reality. It's not the ultimate truth. So if I don't know who I am, if I don't know what I am, then of course I'm looking to the world to try to bring me what? A belief in my own wholeness, an experience of my own wholeness. That's why we call it the honeymoon period for those of us who have been in a new relationship. Thank you, Betty, for laughing. Oh, I found the one. I feel so alive. Oh, this person sees me. Oh, love. I saw a really beautiful eye roll over there. Right? And so have you experienced this? Yes, of course. We meet that person. Or it could be we come to a community that finally sees us. And yes, we have the honeymoon period with community as well. Do you remember the first time you walked in here? Oh, love. It's being reflected, which is truly the purpose of community. The purpose of community to me is to provide a space where we can mirror to each other the love that we are. Here's the catch. No one can do that for me, and yet I don't do it alone. Do you hear that paradox? So if we think about the pre-programmed human, they're very in touch with what's happening, and they're free to express that and return to their natural state. But then what do we get taught about having feelings, or having what we call a meltdown, or acting out? We even call kids that acting out. They're actually just feeling something. I might be embarrassed that they're feeling that at a restaurant or on the plane, so we shut them down, right? I was shut down in that way by people who meant well. There was no one in my life that said, I'm going to intentionally damage the spirit of this young child. I don't think anyone woke up that morning and said, let me find some children to damage today. But we pass on what we could even call generational trauma. And let me share what I mean by that. Yes, generational trauma, there's a lot of different aspects to that. But one of the key ways we pass that on is simply programming someone to believe this is what the world is, and I need to teach you the ways of the world. Competition, all the isms, fear. And so the journey is a journey of returning to the essential knowing, the truth of who and what we are. And when I recognize that is reality, and what we've been taught is reality is the illusion, the invisible realm is reality, and the visible realm is illusion. And if illusion doesn't work, we can call it relative reality. Because I do hear sometimes people saying, for example, I had a friend say, germs are not real. Okay. Or we could say, maybe they're real in relative reality, but they're not the ultimate reality. They're not the truth of who and what I am. How does that shift the way you're viewing the world right now? And I feel like I've said this every time I've been here, but I'll say it again. If my sense of well-being, if my happiness is based on the person in the White House, I will suffer. Every 4 years, every 8 years, right? I will suffer. And so what happens when I recognize that that has no power over me? No power over me ultimately. And when I don't know who and what I am, I look to the world to bring me that sense of wholeness. So that honeymoon period. Even if my candidate gets in office, does it change anything really? I'm not saying we don't vote our conscience. I'm not saying we don't have a calling to do work in the world politically. What I am saying, though, is if I do that from a place of, once this happens, I will be happy. Once I get there, everything will be okay. And I want to speak to the reading about homelessness, because I think it applies here. If I perceive anyone as the other, I create suffering. Now that sounds really great, doesn't it? But how do we live that? If I literally know the first principle, there's only one power and one presence. If I really know that there's only one of us here, if I understand that at a very deep cellular level, then I start to say, oh, anything I reject in the world is an aspect of myself that I am afraid to look at. Anywhere I consider it the other, the person is the other, the political party is the other, the race is the other, the gender is the other, This socioeconomic status is the other. And when I really know there's one, then my entire viewpoint changes. I want to read a little bit it's actually from my new book that I've been working on that's going to come out eventually. I know it will. Pat understands what I'm saying, right? It takes time sometimes. Any of us can at one moment feel perfectly surrendered, trusting that all is exactly as it is intended to be. And then the next, we want to scream at the universe because someone has said or done something that has touched an unhealed wound. Conscious awareness is about making moment-to-moment decisions about where we place our focus. Do we want to focus on the part of ourselves that experiences the pain or the wound? Or do we want to focus on the part of us that is love and light and one with Source? As we grow into deeper consciousness, we are able to recognize this choice. It goes on, but I want to pause right there and invite us to recognize that we're always choosing, either unconsciously or consciously. Most of humanity, and I can say that with a degree of confidence, most of humanity is unconsciously choosing. And what does that mean? That means we're choosing or reacting from the programs of limitation and lack and separation and, yes, fear. So we hear something on the news about the virus, or we watch something about the political landscape, and it touches a deep program of fear and limitation. And if it gets touched, if that wound gets touched, then we start to react from that wound instead of a recognition that love is who we are. Now, does that mean there aren't things in the world that happen? Life is happening all around us. But here's the interesting thing. What I might call horrible, someone else might call perfect and wonderful. What I say is a travesty, someone else says, finally we did that. So based on our lens or the way we view the world is how we respond, and yet, honestly, it's mostly how we react. Something gets touched, and rather than saying, whoa, this just got touched, let me be present with that. Let me honor and have compassion for that place within me that just got touched, that might be a wound that's wanting to heal. Instead of that, we project it outward. How dare you? How could they? I need to be afraid. I need to lock myself in my house, which I know some people are doing right now. And I'm going to even guess, I'll even go out on a limb, and I'm going to say some people that normally come to this community might be doing that today. Now, maybe it is a judgment. I was going to say, that's not a judgment. It's maybe a judgment, right? But here's the thing. If I look at myself without judgment, I can ask some very fundamental and simple questions. In what way is this strategy working for me? I always start with, how is it working? And then, how is it not working? And what do I truly want? What do I truly want? And for most of us, it comes down to connection or love. I want to be seen. I want to feel connected with you. And when I'm deeply connected with that part of me, again, back to what I just read, I have a choice. Do I want to focus on the wound or focus on my wholeness? I don't have to ignore or pretend the wound isn't there. As a matter of fact, the wound is getting touched because it's wanting me to feel it, move through it, and return to the place of knowing who I am, just like the pre-programmed human. So rather than reacting from my fear, I can notice it. Oh, look, that just got touched. I'm feeling afraid. Ooh, look at my strategy. I want to barricade myself, or I want to separate, or I want to judge you, just like I did a moment ago. Or can you think about all the times in your life that you reacted out of fear? All the energy that we've given with reacting out of fear. Love is what we're born with. Fear is what we're taught. That's Marianne Williamson that said that. Love is what we're born with. Fear is what we're taught. And so if we can unlearn that and recognize that we are safe. I want to talk specifically about community because I think that's my title today. Something about authentic community. So community, especially spiritual community, is one of the best opportunities for love and connection, feel good, open-heartedness. It's also an opportunity for division and fear, separation, judgment, bickering, creating coalitions, gossiping. And now, what if we started looking at that as all one? It's not that this group of attributes, if you will, of a community is bad and this is good, because what happens when we feel like we've been doing something that's bad? We're in judgment. Uh-huh. And we create suffering and more fear. Conflict, I can say 100% of the time, comes from a belief that I am right and you are wrong, or that I am wrong and you are right. It's the same. It's the same, right? It's right and wrong. It's good and bad. It's us and them. So why do we control? That word just came to me, I don't know why. Maybe something's happening that we're in control. When I felt out of control, when I felt that I was my personality self, I was seeking safety everywhere I went. And because I felt out of control internally, my solution or my strategy was try to control the externals of my life. And people would say I'm controlling, and I would say, what? How dare you? I'm not controlling, I'm just detailed. I'm just meticulous. And so I realized at some point that the best way I can transform myself is through compassion. Having compassion for the original wounds that created my belief that I needed to defend, or to control, or to opinionate. Because as much as new thought says it's thoughts that create reality, I actually don't think that's the whole truth. Or another way to say it is nothing could be truer and less useful. Yeah, if I change my thinking, I'll change my life. But how do I change my thinking? Right? Or let me just try to change my thinking. Has anyone been there? I'm going to do my affirmations. I am love and light. I am love and light. But how come a part of me feels unlovable? How come there's this place within me that feels unworthy or undeserving? And so that doesn't shift mentally. It shifts by recognizing our precious little self that came into the world and was bombarded with messages of separation and fear. The wound was there. I took on the wound, and I decided that the wound is who I am. I'll have to say at least one controversial thing when I speak. What if we don't have to heal all the wounds? What if instead of this framework that I have to heal everything that's ever happened to me, I recognize that it is part of what created what I call reality, but I can recognize that I have wounds, but I am not my wounds. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. And boy, do I have opinions, but that's not who I am. And so there's a paradigm shift that can happen instantly when I say, oh my gosh, I'm a human being and my mind is constantly sorting and separating, dividing, judging, looking for ways to get some support for my story. That's what the coalitions are about in community or in politics. I have this viewpoint and I find a gathering of other people that have it as well, and then we can say, see, we are right. Everyone else must be wrong. Let's bring some more people over to our camp over here. But when I recognize that I'm not that, and that there's a greater reality, then I don't even reject what I call different. Because I have a lot of friends that say, I'm very, very open-minded. I'm very, very open until it comes to someone with an opposing political view. And then they say, no, they're evil. That's just evil. How could you not feel or believe what I do? And so there's a great paradox here. I want to be clear about something. We can address the issues of the world. We do address the issues of the world through our level of conscious awareness. If I believe that I'm a victim or a martyr, I believe there are victims in the world. And when I believe there's a victim in the world, what might I want to do? Save them. Save them. Yeah, make a difference. But when I am viewing someone as a victim, I'm saying to them, you are not eternal beingness. You are not love. You're a victim to this world. And I'm here to save you. And saving people feels really good, doesn't it? Rescuing feels really good, but it has such a short shelf life. Oh, that felt really good. Another honeymoon period. But then, okay. So some of us chase that. I need to be a bigger savior in the world. And at that level of consciousness, we're looking for a savior as well. A lot of religion is based in that level of consciousness. There are religions that teach you come into this world fundamentally broken. Original sin. So rather than saying I have an opinion about that, I want to say, how is that working? How is that message that we've given people growing up, what is that creating in the world? Martyr, rescuer. When I recognize I am one with the one, then I also recognize all of you are aspects of the divine, perfect emanations or expressions or particles, the Big Bang. We came from that one source. When I recognize that's true for me, I automatically recognize it's true for you. And then no one needs saved. Because a homeless person, if I'm rejecting that person, it's an aspect of myself that I am rejecting. Not just because there's a part of me that could be there, but that person is literally a particle of me. One power and one presence. That's a nice concept. How do I live it? How do I live in the world knowing that reality, radiating that truth, being the love in the world that we're desiring? Because when I'm out of touch with my essential nature, I am seeking that from the world. When I know who and what I am, I want to offer that to the world. I want to be that in the world. And then stuff happens, but it's not the truth. I can see division, but I'm not calling it terrible, right? Because it's not what's happening, it's what I'm deciding about what's happening. That's why I say we can change the past. That's what I'm going to close with. Because people are like, what do you mean I can change the past? So growing up, I had a lot of stories about the world, about my dad, about my mom, about family, about school. I had all these stories, in particular about our family, because I notice in this community you use the word family a lot, which is interesting, right? Because what happens in families? Wait, what was that? Dysfunctional families, yes. And what does it even mean to function or not function, and how do we do that? But I had all these stories, all these beliefs, all these ideas, and when I went to my sisters early in my spiritual evolution or my conscious awareness that I wanted to shift spiritually, I asked them about the stories that I had, and I fully expected different versions. But what I didn't expect was I got completely different stories. Completely. They didn't even resemble each other. My story was, Dad is never home. He's not interested in me. I must be unlovable. Right? And remember, I'm a 4, 5, and 6-year-old. That's the best I could. My brain wasn't developed enough to understand what was happening, so I took it on and decided it was about me. My sister, Dad is completely present, open-hearted, and loving. He's always here for us. Same house. I don't think Dad was treating her differently than he was treating me. So there's a mystery there. But it's less important what happened, right? Because we could go try to figure out what really happened, or we could recognize that because of the conclusions that we created, we have created the entire trajectory of our life based on something that may or may not have happened, at least not in the way that I believed it did. And so if I can go back and look at the original decisions, the original conclusions, I can actually start to shift that and then change what we call the past. Because the truth is, the past only lives in our minds. What do we know about eyewitnesses? Unreliable. Totally unreliable. Not because someone's trying to deceive anyone. We see it differently. We see something happen. We have all these ideas about what just happened, and then we decide, no, that's what just happened. I saw it with my very own eye. I love the flat earthers, by the way. I do. I love them. And let me tell you why I love them. They say this: which is more plausible? You can look out and see the world is flat. It's so obvious. Or that we're on this rock whirling through the universe at this speed around this ball of light. That doesn't make sense. So, okay, in what ways do I do that? I don't believe the world is flat, but remember that collectively we did at one time, right? So it would have been heresy to say other than that. Now we judge the flat earthers. So in what ways am I saying, look, I can see it's true. It's true. This person isn't very loving. This group of people are bad. There's something wrong here. This virus is about to kill us all. Right? We decide these things based on our point of view. And then we call it reality. And then it becomes concretized. And then we don't have choice. But we really do. We have a choice in how we shift, how we're viewing it. So if we can shift out of the evidence and look at the conclusion that we have about the world, we can start to change what we call reality. And a lot of times people come into New Thought and they say, oh, are you saying that you can make it rain or not make it rain or make a car do something? Well, I mean, maybe. Maybe. But the greater reality and the truer freedom, the absolute freedom is I can call it something. I can decide what I'm making it mean. And when I change what I decide about what I'm making something mean, what I see changes. Mm-hmm. So if I am being gratitude in the world, I see gratitude all around me. When I am being love in the world, I see love all around me, even in the midst of something that doesn't look like it. Because I know that everything is love or a request for love. I've shifted out of the conversation of everything is love or fear. Everything is love or a request for love. What's the request here? What's the request in this community when there is something that looks like conflict? What do people really want? Can I offer that here? Can I be that more accurately? And can I be that from the recognition that nothing really needs fixed because nothing's really broken. Not really. And we spend so much time in, oh, this looks broken, but it's not the truth. It's only the truth in relative reality. And 3 months from now, no one will remember what the conflict was. But it seems so real in the moment. This is so real. Now, I don't know if you're having conflict in this community, but I know about spiritual community. I had someone, and I promise I'm going to close with this. I had someone walk up to me after the service when I was at Agape Bay Area full time, and he said, "Can I talk with you for a moment?" I said, "Of course." And he said, "You don't have a hook on the bathroom stall, and I think you need to have a hook on the bathroom stall." And I said, "Great, let me walk you over to our facilities manager." So I walked him over. They met, and I walked away. About an hour later, the person came up to me and said, "I need to tell you something. I'm deeply offended by the way you just treated. You stand up on Sunday morning and preach love and light, but you did not help me with my problem. You passed that on to someone else. You didn't have the heart to even hear me." Do you see all that? And then he left and never came back. Right? Because the person that stands up in front of the room on Sunday mornings isn't authentic or genuine. The person standing up there is hypocritical. The person's not living his principles. All of that was based on that person's lens of me. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, let me help you. Let me get you to the solution. This person can put a hook on the bathroom. I'm not going to put a hook on the bathroom door. I suppose I could, but that's why we have a group of people, right? We all do our part, and I thought I was getting him to the person that could help him. But he decided, and I'm going to guess it's not about what happened, but about what happened. Right? He probably had some kind of people don't see me wound. And so if I didn't spend a certain amount of time with him, that wound got activated. And in this case, he projected it and said it was about me. And that's the great news. That's the great news because I can start to look at my assumptions and my strategies for those assumptions. If I believe the world is not safe, I create strategies to be safe. So let's look at the possibility that we can move beyond our strategies and rest in the truth that has always been and be that in the world and watch what happens. What might happen is that everything I've ever believed no longer seems true. That's disorienting, and it's true freedom. Thank you.